Valuation is the ultimate KPI.
Hey there, welcome to the Valuations podcast brought to you by Truelytics, the premier business intelligence platform for the wealth management industry. My name is Mike Langford, and this is episode 3. And I'm really excited about this one because Jeff Miller, the president and chief operating officer of Truelytics, is joining me today. And we're talking about not only what brought him to the firm and what excited him about it and where he sees the industry going, but we deep dive on the topic of valuations for wealth management firms and individual advisors' financial businesses. So you're going to want to pay attention to this one. Lots of good stuff to come. Before we dive in, just want to remind you, you can send questions in, topics that you want us to cover for this show. Either hit us up on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. You can find us. Just go in there and type in Truelytics and you'll find us. Or send us an email at valuations@truelytics.com. We'd love to hear from you and get your topics on the show. All right, you ready for it? Turn that volume up. Here we go. Jeff is joining me. Hey, Jeff, great to have you on the show. I'm really looking forward to the conversation today. In prep for the show, I started, thinking back on the first couple of episodes we've done. We've only done 2, and this is number 3 here. And in the first episode of the podcast, Terry Mullen mentioned that, when he was pitching you as an investor, relatively early on in the process, it became obvious that you would be a great leadership addition to the team. And you said you wanted to join Truelytics, and as I started thinking about that, I said, "Wow, that's fairly unique and special," because I've spent a lot of time in the early stage startup ecosystem throughout my career, much of it in the fintech and financial services space. And I have to say, this is the first time I can recall where a would-be investor looked at the company and said, "You know what? I'm in. Not only am I in as an investor, I really want to be in as a part of the team." So tell me a little bit about what pulled you in. What was that thing, maybe that aha moment, or just the overall experience that made you say, I'm in. I want to be part of Truelytics.
Sure. Well, thank you again for the invitation to chat. I was introduced to Terry as a potential investor, and I had left a large job at one of the leading financial, or I should say, one of the leading wealth management firms in the industry. And I have a long background in and around our industry of asset management and wealth management. Normally my roles have been around platforms and technology and how that supports all the various business models. So when I was introduced to Terry, I got a chance to really look at this product, and I was captivated by it. I loved what it was doing. And one of the things that we decided to do was that I would travel with him and go on some meetings. We were presenting the product to some large enterprise clients. And what I got a chance to do was to see some of the clients' reactions to our presentation. I was largely quiet in that, but I couldn't help myself but begin to sell. Having sat on the other side, I was typically a buyer of technology, often buyer of technology and platforms. So here I was sitting on the other side again, and I'm having a chance to experience people's reaction to what we were doing. And I think that was a big part of what cemented my own opinion on this, that there's a real need, that people are responding super positively to it. And I could myself see many different possibilities and use cases for the core technology. So that just prompted me to want to be involved more. I seen all the opportunities, seen what we could do. That prompted me to talk to Terry about just let me join the team.
That's fantastic. It's really great. I mean, I love it because you especially when you're starting a company and bringing it to market, the passion of the earliest leadership team really matters to the success, right? And you mentioned you have been on the other side, the buyer side, inside these large companies, so you knew how people think, you knew what the process looked like, and you brought a lot of value to the equation. One of the other things that Terry credited you with is the pivot from the original direct to advisor model for Truelytics to a more or more aptly, I guess in those early days, it was an advisor only model, right? They were looking to bring Truelytics just to the advisor, and they really weren't thinking about the enterprise as much. But one of the things you were very influential in is saying, hey, look, we need to start with the enterprise as our primary target client, and the advisors will flow. Why was that an obvious move in your eyes, and how does it help you serve the advisors better, right? Because it's not that you decided, hey, we're ignoring advisors, and you still will allow independent individual advisors on the platform, but you made the focus the enterprise first. How is that, in your eyes, serving the advisors even better?
Well, when we talk about enterprises, it could be any enterprise that is involved in supporting advisors, right? The industry lives and dies by the advisor and how that advisor is able to effectively serve their clients. And more recently, let's say the past 10 plus years, advisors are more and more focused on their own business. We've seen a lot of advisors move from being W-2 employees to running their own businesses as part of IBDs, independent brokers, or RIAs, and that's a trend that's continuing. And so, in the midst of that trend, there is a continued need for the various enterprises, wherever you are in the ecosystem, to find ways to support advisors in that journey. And a lot of people compete or provide great technology to people just to do their whatever it is that the advisors need to do to make their practices work, and to deliver what they need to deliver to their clients. But the enterprises also have to deliver value to the advisors themselves. They have to be able to help these independent business owners become more and more successful. That's an absolute needed area of expertise or commitment by all of these firms. And so for us, it seemed obvious, because we should associate ourselves with the firms that are offering added value or value to advisors, and that would be good for our business. It would get us in front of more potential users, and it would also allow us to integrate what we're doing better with other technology tools that are provided through these enterprises, and that's exactly what's been happening.
That's fantastic. What's been interesting to me to kind of observe from afar here, and it really hit home for me when I looked through your LinkedIn history there, kind of the IMDb of the business world, right? Seeing you throughout your career that you've been at the biggest of the big firms, right? Morgan Stanley, Putnam, UBS, and others. You're the biggest of the biggest, but now you're at an early stage tech company that's serving that same industry. How's that adjustment been for you? What's been like the biggest challenge, and conversely, what's been the biggest delight for you so far as you embark on this journey?
Well, I also have in my background CEO of another startup, which was maybe 20 years ago or so, but that was an important experience to me as well. So I've worked in both very large companies, global companies, and I've done it on the investment management side, as you mentioned, on the wealth management side, and I've had all sorts of different roles and experiences, both in selling and in sort of managing and buying of technology, as we mentioned earlier. So I've been in a lot of different places, and I've worked both domestically and internationally. So a lot of different experiences, but always, I think the common denominator or common thread in my career experience has been that I've been the builder. Like I've been the guy that has, been starting the businesses or rebuilding the businesses and growing them or fixing them. That's always been what I've done. And so it's actually not as big a change as you would think it would be, because at the end of the day, it's still me doing what I like to do, which is being entrepreneurial and creating, as one of my friends used to say, creating planets from dust.
That's a great analogy. I like it.
So, that's what we do here. There is a tremendous need in the industry. There's a lot of advisors who are going through transitions, and there's a lot of different considerations and things that need to be understood. And we're trying to simplify that and make it better and easier for people. And it's about building to that need and satisfying that. And if we can do that, and ultimately the users are the advisors and they're happy, and they get success from what we do, then the business will be successful. And that's very consistent with what my entire career has been. So I don't find it amazingly that different than the way that I've ever worked before.
Yeah. But it's interesting that you mentioned that the creating planets out of dust. I love that analogy. And, I suspect that is one of the reasons why you seem to have so much empathy and you're able to relate with the position the advisors are in, right? Because as you mentioned, even inside large companies, you have often been tasked with either creating a new business out of nothing, right? Out of the dust, or taking over a business, if you will, and making it better, right? Standing it up, growing it, changing direction or what have you. So it's really interesting to hear that. And you kind of see the connection there of like why you are so able to see where advisors are and where they need to go.
Well, I guess I should have mentioned at the outset of this that I started my career in financial services as an advisor.
Oh, there you go.
I spent only 3 years in it, and I experienced how the challenges and how difficult it is. It's a very, very hard job to build a business, as everyone knows. In particular, it's especially hard as a financial advisor. I, of course, did it in the days when many people were doing it, where you basically you had a phone, and
right.
You went out and you called. The only way you could do it was to call people, because there was no other social media or any other point of leverage that I knew about. And I focused on qualified retirement plans, because I did have a background as a lawyer. I had done work for several years as a pension lawyer, so I had some technical background. And I built up a business focusing on advising qualified plans and subsequently 401k, and quickly parlayed that. After a little bit of success, I parlayed that into a product job in the organization I was working for. But I will never forget, and many, many friends of mine who had gone on to have outstanding careers as financial advisors. So that's kind of my roots as well.
That's fantastic. That whole I've walked a mile in your shoes experience concept really resonates with people. So you said something to me when we first met that has really stuck with me. And in fact, I actually use this kind of a bit of a clip of this, a quote from you in the intro bumper for the Valuations podcast here. And you said that valuation is the ultimate key performance indicator, or KPI for short, for those who aren't aware of that. So can you dig in a little bit on that concept, like where, and give people a sense of why you're so passionate about that? Because it really hit home for me, and I got it right away. But for those who don't quite understand where that notion comes from, that valuation is the ultimate KPI, can you kind of dig into that a little bit?
Sure. So this is something that dawned on me recently in this role, but people talk a lot about key performance indicators, and that's something that at any successful company you try to break it down so that you can look at the things that really matter and focus on those things. And so you see a lot of dashboards and stuff in successful businesses where you're focusing on just those things that are reflective of the health of a business. And by having that dashboard, well-run companies can make the right decisions about where to move resources and where to address opportunities and needs. But if you think about it, in industry, the ultimate reflection of a company's success is in a public company, it's the price of the stock, right? You have shareholders, and your shareholders are looking for a return. And the way that you reward shareholders for providing the capital to you is by creating a return on that capital. So today, if you're a shareholder of Google or you're a shareholder of Apple or Amazon, you've been pretty well rewarded, especially if you've been a shareholder for a long time. And that's all about valuation, because share price is simply a different way of measuring valuation, right? It's your share of the valuation. And so small businesses are like that too. A really great business, small business, is going to be worth more than a similar business that's not great. And so you could have two, in the context of wealth management firms, you could have two seemingly identical businesses, let's say with, I'm making this up, $750 million in assets, and one firm is worth more than the other firm. Well, why is that? Because they are doing things differently. They are managing their business better. Maybe they're more profitable. They probably are, and they have processes, and they have a scalable business model, and the other may not have that, just in this example. And so what ends up happening is you have a valuation. When you go through and we do our valuations, we'll end up looking at one, and we'll look at the other, and we'll say this one is more valuable than that one, right? And we could break it down, and we'll tell you the reasons why. But at the end of the day, the thing that really matters is what is the valuation? And I like to say it's the ultimate KPI, because it is a reflection of all the KPIs in that you might look at in a business. In our case, we look at over 50, but they all roll up into the valuation. So great businesses get great valuations.
Right. So what do you think of the kind of like, if you had to identify, and I know that, on the valuation dashboard, for that when people are in Truelytics, kind of has them categorized. In your mind, what are those most important core contributors to valuation of a wealth management firm or an individual advisor's business? Valuations
are, in general, largely influenced by growth potential, right? So if you know that a business is going to grow into the future and you have high expectations and believe in that growth, then you believe that it's going to be worth more in the future than it is today, because that's essentially what that would translate into. Therefore, the value today takes into account what's expected in the future. That's the story with a lot of businesses that we all know and that we all invest in, or hopefully we all invest in, directly or indirectly. And I mentioned earlier Apple and Amazon. These businesses have had extraordinary valuations over the courses of their existence, largely because of the anticipation of the growth that would come. And since they've consistently proven their ability to grow, they've consistently been able to justify their valuations, and so investors continue to give them higher and higher valuations under the theory that the growth will continue. The same is true in wealth management firms. The firms that are able to grow and can show an ability to grow are always going to be valued more than those who aren't. And that's not the only thing that's important. There are firms who have been able to maintain all of their clients and who do an exceptional job in client service, who's have a great investment process and methodology, and who do a great job utilizing all of their technology and integrating it and demonstrating an ability to manage their businesses in a scalable way, so that when they bring clients on, the costs of bringing those clients on are not high, right? So that's essentially definition of scalability.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned that the investment process, and you and I had a conversation not too long ago about that, and you outlined, how important it was for the firm's valuation, and the reason you hit upon it is, you kind of just touched on it there, is that a would-be buyer for any business has to believe that he can keep the clients, the assets, and the cash flow that they produce for years to come. So the process used to manage investments and manage clients, right? Client interaction. So all that technology that matters, right? So one thing that kind of hit my mind as you were discussing that is, it's a super important point that buyers are actually driving valuations, right? We like to think that what we're doing and the business we have is valuable, but at the end of the day, it's, your business is worth what somebody else will pay for it. Can you explore the concept of what buyers are like looking for, or kind of dive in on that a little more?
So I think ultimately, when sometimes people lose track of this, they think of valuation as truly being just some formula that is going to apply in all instances. And that's just simply not the case. It's things are worth more to different buyers. Different things are worth more to different buyers. And in the case of in the case of these wealth management businesses or practices, the most critical thing is going to be the ability to retain those clients in a situation where the advisor is contemplating a retirement at some point. In the case where a business is joining another business, which is often the case, merging in, so to speak, then it becomes then some of these other considerations become really important. What investment process do you use, and is it consistent with the investment process that we use? Are you utilizing model portfolios, or are you leveraging third parties, or are you running a business where every client is different? I like to say where every client is a snowflake, and you are customizing portfolios for each of those people individually, well, that's a very different model. That's not scalable, that model. And one where you're leveraging model portfolios, or you have model portfolios that you're implementing across households and clients in a more consistent way, that is scalable. You can easily add more clients to that type of business model than you can to one that's highly, highly customized. People have different philosophies about the way they do things, and therefore the way they do things matters to a buyer, because maybe I want to make sure that in my larger business that you're joining when I purchase you, that you're going to do things in a particular way that's consistent with the way that I do things in the larger business. Or if I'm joining like a big consolidator, maybe I think that one way it is a better way. Maybe I think that this is a more consistent way to deliver results to clients than managing a lot of snowflakes, and so those are going to be ultimately valued differently by people. And so what's happening is that buyers are becoming smarter and understanding better what it is that they're buying or what it is they want to buy versus what they don't want to buy. No one wants to buy problems.
Right. That's it. That's a great way of putting it. Nobody wants to buy your problems, right? And I always liken it to buying a house, right? If you're looking to buy a house, the house that is move-in ready and gorgeous and relatively new construction is always going to be valuable to certain people because you get, like you say, no problems. It's in the if it's in the right school district and all those types of things, you're taking that into account, and you don't have to worry about the other person moving out because it's new construction and so forth. So there's always going to be an inherent value there. Whereas if it's an older home that needs a lot of upkeep, needs to be repainted and all that type of the wallpaper's got to come down and those types of things, those are going to nick the valuation, right? They're going to be little dings in the value.
It's while we're on houses, because probably everybody knows horror stories. Who's ever owned a house or bought a house. You buy a house and you do an inspection. You certainly wouldn't buy a house without an inspection. So you find things often, and during the process that affects the price, right? There's a crack in the foundation, that we discovered, and we're going to have to repair that. You're either going to have to do it, or we're going to do it, but we're taking $10,000 off the price, or this, the septic system has to be replaced, or there's an underground oil tank and it has to be removed, and the remediation of that's really expensive because you have to bring in specialists to do that, and you have to get permits and things. It's like those are things that affect the price, right?
Right.
So in the case of a wealth management firm, there's going to be due diligence, right? People are going to want to see everything that they can, and you have to be ready to provide that, and those are going to impact how people value things ultimately. If it's everybody expects a certain amount of issues in any business. It's just that's what business is. Nothing's perfect.
That's right.
What people need to be prepared for and ready for is that valuations get impacted by the needs and desires of the buyer.
This has been great, Jeff. So, in closing, I'm sure lots of people are going to hear this, and there's going to be some of them are going to be like, I want to connect with Jeff. I want to hear more from Jeff. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you or stay connected with you? I assume you're on social media. Well, I mentioned LinkedIn. What are some other ways for people to reach out to you?
LinkedIn is a great way to connect with me. I'm very active user. I read a lot of things that people post up there because that's probably my primary mechanism today, as a matter of fact, for just following what's going on in the industry. It's so efficient. So if you message me through LinkedIn, I'm going to reply. You can also send me an email at jeff@truelytics.com.
Sounds great. Well, Jeff, thank you very much again for joining me today. And hopefully everybody who enjoys this podcast, and we'll be back again next week for another exciting episode of Valuations. Thanks again, Jeff.